Today we're going to take an in-depth look at a subject that many Canadians have been talking about lately. Why living in Canada seems to be getting worse every year. Once known for its peaceful environment, progressive values, and high quality of life, Canada is now facing a series of challenges that are affecting everyday life. In this video, we'll break down the issues into three main areas: the housing crisis, economic challenges, and future obstacles, and discuss how these factors are making life tougher for millions of people. Section 1. The housing crisis. Let's start with the most talked about problem, the housing crisis. Home ownership in Canada, which was once seen as a dream within reach for many, is now slipping away from more and more citizens. Over the past decade, housing prices have skyrocketed, far outpacing wage growth. This imbalance means that while wages remain relatively stagnant, the cost of buying a home has exploded, leaving many people, especially those between 30 and 40 years old, unable to even consider purchasing their own home. Rental prices are also soaring. In major cities like Toronto and Vancouver, finding an affordable rental is a daunting challenge. With rental vacancies hitting an all-time low and many apartments costing close to $3,000 per month for a modest one-bedroom, the pressure on renters has become immense. The scarcity of rental units forces tenants to compete in an oversaturated market, and some are even resorting to extreme measures, such as living in cars or sharing cramped, substandard living spaces just to get by. This housing crisis is not simply a matter of numbers. It has real consequences on the quality of life for everyday Canadians. The dream of owning a home is fading into a distant memory, replaced by a daily struggle to secure safe and affordable accommodation. Section 2. Economic challenges and the job market. Moving on from housing, another major area of concern is the overall state of the economy. On the surface, Canada's economy might seem to be growing, but this growth is largely driven by an increase in population due to immigration rather than improvements in the living standards of native-born citizens. Since 2020, more than 1.2 million new residents have entered Canada, contributing to a boost in the nation's overall GDP. However, when you break it down on a per-person basis, there isn't much real improvement compared to just a few years ago. One of the biggest issues is the disconnect between wages and living costs. While housing prices have surged, wages have remained stagnant. Many Canadians find themselves working longer hours just to cover basic expenses, leaving little time or energy for any sort of savings or leisure. This is especially true for minimum wage workers, who are now under more pressure than ever. Their struggle to cover rent and other living expenses means that they're not only battling rising costs, but also an economy that is not working in their favor. There's also the problem of declining employment in traditional resource-based industries. For decades, Canada's prosperity was closely tied to its natural resources: oil, natural gas, and minerals. The extraction industries, particularly in Alberta, once fueled the growth of a strong middle class. Section 3. Public services, infrastructure, and population concentration. Another key factor contributing to Canada's worsening situation is the strain on public services and infrastructure. Canada is the second largest country in the world by landmass, yet most of its population lives in a narrow band along the U.S. border. This heavy concentration in urban areas such as Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver puts enormous pressure on local infrastructure and public services like healthcare, education, and transportation. As the population in these regions grows, fueled in large part by immigration, the demand for services increases even faster than governments can expand them. Public services are already overstretched, and the quality of these services is beginning to suffer. With more people competing for limited resources, the quality of life in major cities continues to decline. Furthermore, the government's response to this population boom has been to raise taxes and expand the public sector. While this approach is meant to address the needs of a growing populace, it has also added an extra financial burden on citizens. Many Canadians feel that these increased taxes and public spending are merely a band-aid solution, one that hides deeper structural problems within the economy rather than solving them. Section 4, the future challenges facing Canada. Looking ahead, the future of Canada poses even more challenges if the current trends continue. One of the biggest future risks is that the government's current policies may not be enough to counteract the deep-seated issues affecting the country. The growing divide between the wealthy and the rest of the population is a stark reminder that the economic benefits are not being distributed evenly. The decline in traditional resource-based jobs, coupled with the rise of automation and the rapid evolution of the global economy, means that many Canadians could be left behind. This vulnerability is especially pronounced for those with lower levels of education or those living in areas that are already struggling to attract new investment. The risk is that as the job market shifts further, we could see even more widespread economic insecurity and inequality. Another major future challenge is the continued strain on housing and public services. With urban centers likely to become even more congested, and with limited new housing being built, the housing crisis could deepen further. The current trend of increasing costs and decreasing availability of affordable homes shows no sign of abating. For young people and new immigrants, this means a future where finding stable, affordable housing becomes an even bigger challenge. At the same time, government attempts to manage these issues, such as increased spending on infrastructure and higher taxes, may not be sufficient if they fail to address the root causes of these problems. If policy adjustments do not lead to meaningful changes in how housing is supplied and how wages are increased, then the standard of living could continue to deteriorate. Canadians may face a future where the gap between rich and poor grows ever wider and where basic necessities like housing, healthcare, and education become luxuries that only a few can afford. Section 5. Possible solutions and the path forward. Despite these daunting challenges, there is still hope. There are solutions that, if implemented decisively, could help turn things around. The first step is addressing the housing crisis directly. This means a concerted effort to build more affordable homes, reform zoning laws that currently restrict higher density housing, and encourage private investment in the housing market. Streamlining construction regulations and investing in the necessary infrastructure could make it easier to complete new housing projects quickly and efficiently. On the economic front, efforts must be made to ensure that wage growth keeps pace with rising living costs. The economy, though growing on paper thanks to increased immigration, is failing to deliver the wage growth and job security that Canadians once relied on. At the same time, declining resource-based jobs, the rapid pace of automation, and the heavy concentration of the population in a few urban areas are placing unprecedented strain on public services and infrastructure. Thank you for watching. If you found this video informative, please give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe for more detailed analyses on the issues that matter.